I want to get to our other guest as well, Nicholas Economides, professor of economics at New York University. He joins me now from San Francisco. Good to see you again. Look, as I talked to Yen Hong about this, this is becoming a pretty big deal. This is not just about one company anymore or one industry. This is multiple industries, multiple companies, and this is about antitrust issues that the Chinese, well, let me start with this. Is it the exact same definition of what we think antitrust is?
Well, antitrust law in China is relatively new. The antitrust law in China is similar to the antitrust law in Europe and the United States. But it also has a provision that allows the regulator to take into account industrial policy in China, which such provision doesn't exist in Europe and the United States. So in many ways it's similar, but it has some exceptions as well.
That provision, can you elaborate a bit more on specifically what that provision is?
The provision is in the law that it says that the regulator should take into account industrial policy in China. Now, how it's going to be interpreted in practice, I'm not sure, but it is a provision in the law.
I'm sure the lawyers are working on this as well. Now, something I asked Yen Hong as well is about the prices. For example, if one car sells for, say, $50,000 in China, but sells for $40,000 in Germany, does that constitute a violation of antitrust laws?
Not necessarily. Cars in Europe, for example, typically cost much less than in the United States, and they're the same cars, I mean. So I think that the prices are determined by how much people are willing to pay, and to some extent by cost as well. But if you have luxury cars, people are willing to pay a lot for them. For example, in the United States, they will end up being more expensive than in Germany. And so BMWs, Mercedes are more expensive in the United States than in Europe.
I mean, it's no secret that China wants domestic consumption to continue to pick up and grow. And it's hard to not notice that a lot of these companies are obviously foreign companies. Is there any correlation there?
Well, I mean, the antitrust law is supposed to apply to everyone, foreign and domestic companies, and it has to do with the monopoly position that they might have. So if you have a company that monopolizes the market, let's say monopolizes the market for cars, like the General Motors used to a long time ago in the United States, then you can start a case against it. If I recall correctly from your report, the case against Audi and Mercedes was about maintenance and parts. And as far as parts is concerned, as far as genuine parts are concerned, the company is the only one that can provide those. As far as service is concerned, you can service your car at the Mercedes dealer, or you can service your car at the local mechanic. It shouldn't be a monopoly concern, in my opinion. But the parts could be easily a monopoly concern.
All right. Look, I'm a huge proponent of free markets, but here's the other side of the story that we're not talking about, that we maybe should be, and that is China relies on a lot of foreign companies for investments within China. And the reaction from a lot of foreign companies, if they're considering to invest in China, they have to take this very seriously. How should they react?
Well, I think any company that sells in China, irrespective of if it invests or not, should take antitrust law very seriously, and even if its sales are relatively small. But as far as investment is concerned, especially if the investment is China-specific, and it's about, let's say, software that will be sold only in China, or something like that, then clearly the companies are going to be reluctant to invest a lot if the antitrust law is applied to them in a very harsh way. I think worldwide companies are very used to antitrust law because of the United States, Europe, Japan, Brazil, and others having such law. So I don't think any company will be reluctant to invest in China if they perceive that the Chinese law, the Chinese antitrust law, is applied fairly to them. So I wouldn't be so concerned about that. And I think it's up to the Chinese authorities to show that, in fact, the law is similar to the United States and EU law and is applied fairly.
Yeah. And look, to be fair, it's not just China. There are plenty of areas around the world where antitrust is an issue. And I think over the past decade, we've seen so many mergers and acquisitions. We've seen bigger and bigger companies come together and join forces. So there's less companies, but they're all bigger, and they all have a kind of a monopoly in some way, shape, or form. Is there a way to reverse this?
Yes and no. First of all, there is a review of a merger when it's proposed, and China, as well as the United States and the European Union, have antitrust law that allows reviews of mergers. So at the time of the merger, when the companies say we would like to merge, would like to buy each other, then at that time there is a possibility for this to be stopped absolutely, or maybe not stopped completely, but various conditions be imposed on those companies.
All right.
So that can happen, and it does happen.